Check, 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 check. 1, 2, 3, 4.
because I can't find my ruler channel. donut. You want one?
No, I'm good.
Watching the old waistline and the...
Well, if I eat too much sugar, it's like a spike. Like 11:30, I'll be like,
That's why I swap out the chairs.
The Subcommittee on Water Resources and Environment will come to order. I ask unanimous consent that the chairman be authorized to declare a recess at any time during today's hearing. Without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that members not on the subcommittee be permitted to sit with the subcommittee at today's hearing and ask questions. Without objection, so ordered. As a reminder, if members wish to insert a document into the record, please also email it to documentsti@mail.house.gov. Again, that's documentsti@mail.house.gov. I now recognize myself for the purposes of an opening statement for 5 minutes. Today's hearing marks the third in a series this subcommittee is holding in preparation for the Water Resources Development Act, or WARDA as we call it, of 2024. In December, we heard from representatives of the Army Corps of Engineers and national stakeholders in our first two WARDA hearings. As one of our witnesses stated in our last hearing, WARDA is the most important piece of legislation, they said, that most Americans have never heard of, and how true that probably is. On the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee, we are proud to work hard and draft a WARDA regularly. In fact, since 2014, Congress has passed a WARDA bill every 2 years in bipartisan fashion. In addition to being on a dependable and predictable schedule, these bills have been bipartisan and consensus-based, ensuring consistency and certainty, which provides greater benefit for stakeholders and communities across the country. I look forward to continuing this tradition and working with my colleagues on both sides of the aisle to pass another WARDA bill this year. WARDA is a critical legislative vehicle ensuring communities' water resource needs are met nationwide. Navigation, flood control, beach nourishment, ecosystem restoration, hydropower, water supply, and recreation at core facilities are all important issues we will address in this year's WARDA. In other words, our nation needs WARDAs to keep our communities safe and functional. Today, I look forward to hearing directly from my colleagues on both sides of the aisle on their priorities important to them and their constituents, and how they will benefit communities across our country. I thank each and every one of them for taking time out of their busy schedule to be with us today. And with that, I now recognize Ranking Member Napolitano for 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this third hearing in a series of our informed development of a new WARDA for 2024. The Army Corps of Engineers are our largest water managers in the nation and our resident experts on everything from flood prevention to water supply to aquatic ecosystem restoration. We have so far excellent testimony from Assistant Secretary of Army for Civil Works, Michael Connor, as well as Lieutenant General Scott Spellman, Chief of Engineers at the Corps. We also have heard from highly engaged stakeholders who shared helpful insight into the impacts and policies of the Corps' work. Truly, every different perspective is helpful to our work here. Today, we welcome our members of Congress to represent their priorities for consideration in the WARDA 2024. The Corps operates nationwide. We impact just about every single district in the country. With the reach so far and wide, we need to make sure we recognize district-specific issues facing our communities. This will be totally different on the East Coast versus the West, and every different within a particular state. The testimony we see today will help to inform us on what matters most to our colleagues as we move forward with drafting legislation. This local perspective is key to helping our communities achieve their desired outcomes and ensuring the Corps' expertise is accessible to all those who seek it. As we start developing our sixth consecutive bipartisan WARDA bill, we are seeing that the legislation has become a product of its own success. Our constituency demands and now expect that we move forward with developing this legislation every Congress. This consistency and predictability is essential to the Corps itself and stakeholders across the country. Mr. Chairman, I look forward to a continued partnership with you in addressing the unique needs of members on both sides of the aisle. The success of the Committee on WARDAs has come from recognizing the collaboration, compromise, and other tools to success in hyper-partisan times. That was true under the leadership of former Chairman Schuster, Chair DeFazio, and I look forward to a similar path under your leadership with the leadership of Chairman Grace. Thank you to all members who made time to come before the committee today. I look forward to your testimony and working with you to write another successful WARDA and continue the important work of the Corps for Water Resources projects nationwide. I yield back.
I thank the gentlelady. I now recognize the ranking member of the full committee, Mr. Larson, for up to 5 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I want to welcome everyone to our Member Day hearing, which is an opportunity for our House colleagues to share with this committee their needs and priorities that are most pressing for their constituents. Close to 40 members have signed up to testify today. And this committee we're now working together on solving local water resources challenges and creating economic opportunity for the people we represent. That history of success here is evidenced by the 5 bipartisan and bicameral WARDAs enacted since 2014, a tradition we expect to carry forward with passage of this 6th WARDA in a row. The enthusiasm of members seeking to testify today is not surprising. This hearing is happening at a very important time. After years of neglect, we're now seeing real and sustained investments in our nation's water-related infrastructure, including ports and harbors, flood risk reduction for communities, and restoration of the natural environment. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, or BIL, is delivering tangible results for communities all across the country. The BIL provided a massive down payment, a total of about $17 billion for studying and implementing critical WRDA projects. Ensuring that we continue to build on that success is essential, and the testimony that our colleagues today will aid us in that effort. WRDA 24 is also an opportunity to continue to advance the policy achievements of the last few WRDAs, including supporting America's competitive edge by investing in harbor and inland waterway navigation, making investments that create jobs and opportunities for everyone, building climate-resilient communities, increasing equity across core projects, especially to advance the needs of economically disadvantaged and tribal communities, and addressing local water and wastewater infrastructure needs. So thank you, Mr. Chair, for your commitment in working in a bipartisan manner to see this legislation over the finish line. Including a diverse range of perspectives is essential to ensuring the work of this committee meets the needs of people from across the country. Making sure our members can directly advocate for the districts is an essential part of this process. So I want to thank all the members who have made time to come to the committee today. I'm eager to hear your testimony. With that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I'd now like to welcome all of our witnesses and thank each of you for being here today. I'll not go over the light system. I think you all know that pretty well. I'll just add we are not the United States Senate, so keep your comments short. I ask unanimous consent that the witnesses' full statements be included in the record without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the record of today's hearing remain open until such time as our witnesses have provided answers to any questions that may be submitted to them in writing without objection, so ordered. I also ask unanimous consent that the record remain open for 15 days for any additional comments and information submitted by members or witnesses to be included in the record of today's hearing without objection, so ordered. As your written testimony has been made part of the record, the subcommittee asks that you limit your oral remarks to 5 minutes. Further, given the number of members appearing before the subcommittee today and out of consideration for our colleagues' time, I ask unanimous consent that members of the subcommittee be given 2 minutes to question each member witness if they so choose, following their statements. Without objection, so ordered. With that, we will start with our great friend and colleague, Ms. Carol Miller from West Virginia. You are recognized for go ahead. You're recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Good morning, Chairman Rouser and Ranking Member Larson. Thank you for allowing me to be here today to testify on behalf of my Water Resources Development Act request. I really appreciate your
Bring that microphone a little closer to you.
I appreciate your time and your attention. I have requested a feasibility study at the R.D. Bailey watershed in Mingo and Wyoming counties of West Virginia. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers started an environmental impact and feasibility study within the watershed at the cost of a private company in 2020. In 2022, without providing an explanation, the Corps terminated the study prematurely after already spending part of the private funding. In other words, they stopped midstream. Not only was this a waste of money, it was a huge waste of time, and it didn't end in any information being released about the watershed. Therefore, I would like to request that the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers be mandated to complete a feasibility study at the R.D. Bailey watershed so that we can better complete and understand the area and how certain activities might impact the R.D. Bailey Dam. Thank you very much for having me before your committee and considering my request.
We thank the gentlelady. Ms. Mean.
Chairman Rouser, Ranking Member Napolitano, Ranking Member Larson, and distinguished members of the House Transportation and Infrastructure Subcommittee on Water Resources and Environment, thank you for allowing me to testify today. I'm honored to share with you all my priorities as the committee considers reauthorization of WRDA of 2024 that will support the safety and well-being of my constituents in Queens, New York. 2 years ago, I testified in front of this committee about the horrifying impacts that Hurricane Ida had on New York City. The storm sadly took the lives of 13 New Yorkers, many of whom were my constituents. I told the committee about how New York's 100-plus-year-old stormwater system is unable to keep up with increasingly powerful and frequent storms that cause deadly flooding and economic damage to Queens. And now I sit before you in 2024, which will mark the 3-year anniversary of Ida, to inform you that Queens is still at risk from these storms. In Queens, we view terms like 100 or 500-year-old floods with skepticism because we know from experience that these storms are occurring with greater frequency. A year after Ida, many of my constituents who were still recovering from storm damage were again hit by horrific flooding. During that storm, the city of New York sent out an emergency alert advising people who live in basement apartments, for example, to move to higher floors. And even in the 2 weeks before Ida, Tropical Storm Henri broke the existing record for rainfall in the city. I can go on, but the evidence is clear. These storms are occurring with greater frequency, and New York City is not prepared. In the Water Resources Development Act of 2022, I was proud to secure a $119 million authorization for Queens. And now I'm asking for that authorization to please be increased to $250 million in the 2024 reauthorization. This would authorize the Army Corps of Engineers to spend up to $250 million to work with the City of New York in upgrading environmental infrastructure in Queens. This could fund projects that directly address the devastating flooding that my constituents face and to help save lives. Thank you again for your time and consideration of this matter. I ask that the chairman and ranking member consider my request for inclusion in this year's WRDA reauthorization to protect the people of Queens. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Mr. Stile, you're recognized.
Thank you very much, Chairman Rouser, and thank you to the members of the committee for joining us today.
Bring that microphone closer to
See if I get it. Is that better for you? Thank you very much. In January 2020, storms dramatically impacted many communities on the Great Lakes. We've had high water levels, we've had challenges to breakwaters. Under current law, what we see is a real difficulty of smaller communities accessing federal funds. And the answer here is to make sure that we're revising WRDA in a manner that actually allows smaller communities, in particular those along the Great Lakes, to be able to access federal funds that already exist to make important repairs in both harbors and breakwaters. If the repairs aren't made to some of the aging and damaged breakwaters, flooding and storms can threaten many of our communities like Racine or Kenosha, Wisconsin, in my district, but communities all across the Great Lakes. And so for that reason, I'm here today to advocate for my proposal to add to the 2024 Water Resources Development Act. My proposed language would provide another avenue for publicly owned, underserved community harbors, particularly ones in the Great Lakes, to obtain federal funding for certain water infrastructure projects. Should the language be included in the finalized 2024 WRDA bill, more communities struggling to generate the necessary capital to complete critical water infrastructure and harbor maintenance projects would qualify for that assistance. It also removed one of the barriers to expeditely complete dredging projects, which is really essential for many of our Great Lakes harbors. I appreciate the subcommittee's engagement with my staff on this issue, and I look forward to our office's continued collaboration. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Case, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Ranking Member, members of the committee, and thank you very much for allowing me to testify today on our 2024 Water Resources Development Act. Special mahalo to Mr. Larson for visiting Honolulu to look at some of our critical projects last week. I certainly invite the committee members to do the same. I have policy requests, related requests for your consideration, but today I want to highlight two critical U.S. Army Corps of Engineer projects that must be addressed in WRDA this year. These projects are located in my district of Honolulu proper, but both of them are also critical to the basic functioning of Hawaii statewide. The first is the Alawai Flood Risk Management Project, which was first conceived back in 1999 and was authorized and funded by Congress for design and construction in our 2028 WRDA. This project will address severe flood risk across the Alawai watershed, which is in Honolulu proper, running from the top of the mountains down to the ocean in central Honolulu. This endangers the life, property, and livelihood of about 200,000 residents of this watershed. But equally important, Waikiki, which is the engine of our tourist economy, our #1 economy in Hawaii, lies at the ocean edge of this particular watershed, and a flood of any magnitude would cause untold damage to our overall economy. The Corps worked over the last couple of years since 2018 to revise its original plan authorized in the prior WRDA in an effort to meet community concerns, and ultimately paused the project in June of 2021 while those concerns were addressed. The Corps has recently come back with a proposed revised plan at a cost of $1 billion plus, and that plan is currently out for comment on a draft EIS with an expected finalization in mid-year. The continuation of this critical project will require further WRDA authorization. Also in central Honolulu, Honolulu Harbor, the state of Hawaii's primary harbor, is way overdue for extensive modifications to assure our current and next generation maritime needs. Honolulu Harbor, which in its modern configuration was completed in 1952, is the linchpin to life in Hawaii. As an isolated island state, about 80% of our goods and materials are imported, and 95% of this imported goods and materials comes through Honolulu Harbor. So the harbor is not only the harbor that serves the island of Oahu, which we have our principal population center on, but is also the transshipment point for virtually all shipping out to the other islands of Hawaii. And by the way, it's also the shipping point focus for the exports from Oahu and the rest of the state. As I said, the harbor is way overdue for just basic navigational and operational upgrades, which are required for continued functioning for both civilian use and elements of our military communities. And Congress recognizes as much by authorizing and funding a full Army Corps study of modifications through the bipartisan infrastructure law. That investigation is already well underway, but the Corps believes that the study authorization must be updated to reflect expanded complexity, scope, and funding needs. Additionally, in the course of this initial investigation, our local partner, the Hawaii State Department of Transportation, has strongly expressed the necessity of expanding the study scope to include elements of coastal storm risk management and resiliency. Providing this additional refined and expanded authorization will ensure that our critical harbor is designed for resilience and that this literal lifeline for Hawaii remains operational in the face of natural disaster and weather modification contingencies. Thank you again so much for allowing me to testify in support of these critical projects, and I look forward to working with the committee to advance these authorizations in our current WRDA cycle.
Thank the gentleman. Mr. Higgins, you're now recognized.
Mr. Chairman, Madam Ranking Member, members of the committee, thank you for allowing me to address you today. Louisiana is home to many of the nation's largest ports and most trafficked waterways, some of the largest flood mitigation and coastal restoration projects. Each of these assets rely on WRDA's policy guidance and funding support through the work plan for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. I'd like to particularly stress the importance of dredging the Calcasieu Ship Channel. This is a 64-mile channel, originally intended to be 400 feet wide and 40 feet deep. It extends into the Gulf of Mexico, and it provides access to the epicenter of LNG export for the entire country. We are seeking authorization to deepen the channel by up to 5 feet. This is very important. Doing so would provide underkeel clearance for larger vessels, increasing the safety of ocean-going vessels transiting the channel, and generating new economic opportunities for the region and the country. The ships are getting bigger. This is the single most important ship channel, arguably, in the country as it relates to our delivery of clean, affordable, energy across the world. The Calcasieu Ship Channel delivers over 60% of the LNG sent to our allies overseas. So the performance of the Calcasieu Ship Channel impacts the world. Further, rock jetties that were congressionally authorized for the Calcasieu River and Pass project to protect the 400-foot wide inside channel require extension in the Gulf of Mexico about 1.5 miles. Rock jetties are a simple formula that work very well, but we require the appropriate funding and authorization to extend those jetties. This is supported by the Army Corps of Engineers as well. Regarding money, the Calcasieu River and Pass project in the Port of Lake Charles generates $39.1 billion in economic activity and $2.6 billion in federal revenue annually. It supports 108,700 direct and indirect jobs in Louisiana and about 160,000 jobs nationwide. It's estimated that once these new investments are realized, an additional $74.5 billion will be contributed to the national economy and an additional $5.24 billion annually in federal tax revenue. Additionally, my office has submitted several requests aimed at advancing coastal restoration projects along the Gulf Coast and improving flood mitigation and water management strategies. These efforts are critical for coastal and inland communities across South Louisiana and protecting the LNG industrial sector. I appreciate the time we were granted today to address the committee, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank the gentleman. Ms. Capter, you're now recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Rouser, Ranking Member Napolitano, Ranking Member of the full committee, Mr. Larson, and Congressman Garamendi. Thank you for you and your staff for doing all the work to put this hearing together and to develop the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. And I must call out the special qualities of Ranking Member Napolitano. I know this is her last year of service in the Congress, but I wish to say that, Congresswoman, your dignity, your acumen, and your perseverance elevate the reputation of this House. Thank you so much for your service. I appreciate the opportunity to discuss the important water resource development needs of the communities in Ohio's 9th District across northern Ohio, the Lake Erie Islands, as well as the Great Lakes region as a whole. I hold the privilege of representing the largest watershed in the entire Great Lakes region. It drains increasing rainfall and water flows across segments of 3 states through our district into Lake Erie, the southernmost of the Great Lakes. Our bountiful region, agriculturally, also is the most tiled region in our nation, having been installed to drain what is known as the Great Black Swamp. We live in a mud puddle. With increasing rainfall, challenges to sub-watershed functional equilibrium are increasing. The Corps could aid our efforts to manage these changing circumstances by producing a detailed sub-watershed topographical and directional flow map that can serve to detail sub-watersheds and their interrelationship so our region can better handle the rising amounts of rainfall for proper land and freshwater stewardship, storage, reservoirs, filtration, necessary tree and vegetation plantings, and windbreaks. Another significant challenge is the need to advance the Corps' critical work maintaining and improving the harbors and waterways on Great Lakes in a manner that improves water quality in the largest fresh surface water system on Earth. In Lake Erie, which borders my district, meeting that goal will require the Corps and its non-federal partners to maximize the beneficial use of dredge material from federally authorized harbors, even partnering, imagine that, with the U.S. Department of Agriculture on regenerative soil complements as our nation prepares a new farm bill. Thanks to your committee's inclusion of Section 8130B in the WRDA 22, the Corps is now making progress on dredged material management plans for the Lake Erie harbors that will not involve open lake disposal. However, Corps financial assistance for the design and implementation of dredged material placement facilities in the state of Ohio continues to fall short of what is authorized by law. The state of Ohio and the individual Lake Erie Port authorities have made tremendous investments in beneficial use placement sites and confined disposal facilities over many years. It is time for the Corps to step up and cost share these improvements in accordance with standing authorities. I urge the committee to direct the Corps to expedite the completion of cost-sharing agreements for the beneficial use placement sites and confined disposal facilities on Lake Erie that are currently being planned and designed by non-federal partners at their own expense. Protecting our freshwater kingdom of the Great Lakes also requires completion of the inner basin invasive species barrier at Brandon Road Lock and Dam. Located on the Des Plaines River near Joliet, Illinois, Brandon Road is a central connection point through which invasive carp species can move between Illinois waterway system into Lake Michigan and the 4 other Great Lakes, severely harming native fish species. $226 million from the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act will fund the construction and deployment of state-of-the-art technologies and innovative programs that interrupt movement, but local cooperation requirements remain a challenge to implementation. Thanks to your committee's work on the Word of 22, construction of the inner basin invasive species barriers now requires 90% federal contribution, and the committee can further ensure implementation by modifying the cost sharing for operation maintenance, repair, replacement, and rehabilitation of the measures. I want to thank the committee for its continued focus on another ecological problem we face in the Great Lakes, harmful algal blooms. And I urge the committee to continue supporting the ongoing work of the Corps for HAB detection, control, and prevention. I wanted to urge the committee to expand the scope of the HAB demonstration program authorized in WRDA 2020 to address not only HABs associated with water resource projects, but also HABs that adversely impact large bodies of water, regional, national, or international significance. That will ensure that demonstration projects designed to address HABs in western Lake Erie, some of the most frequent and severe in the nation, will be eligible for funding under the Corps program. My time has expired, but I strongly urge the committee to emphasize the importance of demonstration projects designed to develop and deploy advanced monitoring tools and networks to address the nutrient loading that is at the root cause of HAB at the source of the problem. Thank you so very much, and I hope the Corps can help us in the coming year to find a second water intake location to serve the large Toledo, Ohio regional area, so our water is never shut off again for 3 days because of invasive HABs in our water system. Thank you all so very much.
I thank the gentlelady for her testimony. Are there any questions for any of the panelists up to now? Looking and seeing none, y'all are free to leave. And those who have come in, just make your way to the your seat.
One down, 6 to go.
So we'll start with Ms. Gluesenkamp-Perez. When you're ready, you'll have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Rouser, and thank you, Ranking Member Larson. I have here a typewritten letter from 40 years ago requesting conveyance of a parcel of land held by the Army Corps of Engineers in my home county of Skamania County. My county is over 1 million acres of land. Less than 0.5% of that is commercially developable. So this 1.6 acre lot may seem very small to the committee and small potatoes, but where I live, this is the kind of thing that can make an incredible difference in empowering my community to have real economic opportunity to develop and support themselves. It's a result of federal, state, and land trust ownership that we are so reduced. And so I ask this body to be different than the 40 preceding it. This letter was written before I was born, 2.5 years before I was born. So this has been a long time in the making, and I ask for your urgency in considering this. The Port of Skamania requested this, and it's been, we've been in agreement with the Army Corps of Engineers, and so I appreciate any urgency we can bring to this. Secondly, I'd like to bring up Wahkiakum County, also an economically disadvantaged area in my district, located on the Columbia River. It's requesting support from the Army Corps for a study to address flooding problems in Roseburgs and Gray River. The area regularly experiences flooding. As a result, fine sediment accumulates at the confluence of the rivers and of Grays and Columbia, and over the past 30 years, the floods have only gotten worse. When flooding occurs in the Grays River, it cuts off access to approximately 500 people living in these rural communities, often for more than 2 days at a time. Within a matter of hours, the flooding limits vital emergency services, business operations, and school transportation, and leaves behind sediment that can be dangerous and time-consuming to remove. That's why I support the county's request for the Army Corps to assess the causes of the fine sediment acclimation and help determine solutions to mitigate risks for addressing this. These are two important projects to my district, but they're just a snapshot of the provisions I look forward to supporting in this year's WRDA. My district is home to 15 ports that are critical economic drivers that are very dependent on the Army Corps and the work authorized in this legislation. I've been told that I have more ports than any member of Congress west of the Mississippi. These are priorities that are supported by a broad range of stakeholders in my district, and I look forward to working with this committee to get them over the finish line. Thank you. And I also request to submit this historic piece of evidence, the longevity of this request to the committee.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you.
And thank the gentlelady, Mr. Fry.
I'm here today to join my colleagues in underscoring the critical role of the Water Resources Development Act of 2024 for not only my state, but my district, and convey these specific priorities. I applaud the leadership of this committee, Chairman Graves, Ranking Member Larson, Subcommittee Chairman Rouser, and Ranking Member Napolitano for this opportunity. I'm proud to represent the 7th District of the state of South Carolina, which is about the half of the coastline, the northern half of the coastline, and extends westward into the interior, into an area known as the PD. I have submitted several priorities to this committee on behalf of my constituents, and I want to highlight some of those for you today. In the PD region of South Carolina, in the city of Florence, they are taking some necessary steps to address growth and increasing needs of the citizens and community by providing significant water, wastewater, stormwater, and environmental restoration with new industry in the city, a $1.5 billion economic project that was announced just this year, plus growth. Approximately 4,300 residential units will increase the capacity needed for water distribution. Additionally, this will require expansion of wastewater management and a more efficient sanitary sewer collection system. I have requested authorization through the Army Corps' Environmental Infrastructure Program for the city of Florence to help in this effort. Unfortunately, the city residents of Florence face water challenges daily. For example, their drinking water is often red. If you look at their toilets, there are red rings around them. If they wash their clothes, they are brown or stained yellow. I'm grateful for the opportunity to hopefully find solutions to this problem that my constituents face regularly. North of Florence, Mr. Chairman, lies a town on the border of North Carolina called Cheraw, South Carolina, which also faces significant water, wastewater, stormwater, and environmental restoration needs. I have requested authorization through the Army Corps' Environmental Infrastructure Program to enable access to funding for these issues. The town is taking an aggressive approach in updating its water infrastructure to improve that quality, upgrade its critical facilities, and expand capacity to accommodate future growth. In fact, Mr. Chairman, they cannot grow anymore without this expansion. They are at their limit. Cheraw needs to construct a new water treatment plant and a wastewater treatment expansion and implement a stormwater master plan over the next decade. Without construction of a new water treatment plant, they are at risk of losing safe access to reliable drinking water. This request also aids in the efforts to reduce the impact of increased localized flooding while increasing the capacity in existing stormwater and drainage systems. Similarly, in the town next to Cheraw, in Chesterfield, South Carolina, in 2018, Hurricane Florence destroyed a sewer line crossing the Thompson Creek near the Buchanan Bridge, allowing raw sewage to spill into the Thompson Creek. The town of Chesterfield has rented a pump. They have rented a pump through 2023 to pump around the destroyed sewer line, but the town has been trying to get the necessary funding, Mr. Chairman, for a permanent solution since 2018 to replace the temporary sewer line, install a pump station, and attach the sewer line to the bridge. The town has been utilizing the Army Corps' Environmental Infrastructure Authority. The town of Chesterfield could experience significant relief and aid in its ongoing recovery efforts from Hurricane Florence, which occurred over 5 years ago. And lastly, for the committee, I have submitted requests on behalf of our state's ports. The health and prosperity of South Carolina's economy and our people are intricately linked to our state's ports and waterways. In our state, major infrastructure and investment initiatives are managed or spearheaded by the South Carolina Ports Authority, which owns and operates public marine terminals in the Port of Charleston and 2 separate inland ports in Greer, South Carolina, and in my district, Dillon. Over 70% of all cargo exported through the South Carolina ports originates from companies within the state. In a region projected to experience significant population growth, South Carolina is vitally important to the broader economy of the nation. These projects rely on the investments and resources made possible through the Water Resources Development Act. Specifically in this year's bill, I'm advocating for 3 priorities. First, to adjust the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Harbor Maintenance Trust Fund donor port designation requirements to more effectively capture and recognize the scale of the port's impact within the state and region, such as that of the South Carolina Ports Authority, and more specifically, the Port of Charleston. Second, to align the cost share for maintenance of harbors with modernized harbor depths by increasing eligible depths up to 55 feet, as Charleston and other major East Coast ports have invested heavily in deepening their harbors beyond 50 feet to meet both commercial demand and the increasing size of vessels calling on the U.S. ports. Third and lastly, Mr. Chairman, to authorize a feasibility study for the Army Corps of Engineers Charleston District to equalize the Federal Navigation Channel segment of the North Charleston Terminal to 52 feet. I'm proud to submit these priorities to the committee, and I thank you for your time. And with that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, Mr. Kilmer.
Thank you, Chairman Rouser and Ranking Member Napolitano and Ranking Member of the full committee, Larson. Thanks for holding this Member Day hearing and for providing an opportunity to share 2 of my priorities for the upcoming Water Resources Development Act. First, I want to draw your attention to the Edda's Hook Beach Erosion Control Project near Port Angeles, Washington, where I grew up. Originally authorized in WRDA 1974, this project supports our national security goals by helping to maintain access to the U.S. Coast Guard station at Port Angeles, while also protecting Port Angeles Harbor from erosion. I was pleased that last year the bipartisan infrastructure law actually provided funding for Edda's Hook through $1.5 million provided by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers for revetment repair. This funding ensures that facilities at Edda's Hook, including the U.S. Coast Guard base, can benefit. So while this funding was good news, we've learned that this project is the only navigation project overseen by the Seattle District without a 100% federal cost share for these purposes. Given the relative economic distress of that community, given the significant national security importance of this project, and the needed support it would bring to the city of Port Angeles, my priority request would bring the federal cost share for Edda's Hook into line with other O&M navigation projects. I also want to highlight the Duckabush Estuary Project, Estuary Restoration Project. This project was identified as part of the Puget Sound Nearshore Ecosystem Restoration Project, which was authorized in WRDA 2016. I'm proud that the first project to be put into action from that initiative is in my district. The Duckabush Estuary Restoration Project will remove a large amount of fill that was placed in the river floodplain to support U.S. Highway 101 and replace it with an estuary spanning 1,600-foot-long bridge, reconnecting the Duckabush River to the neighboring wetlands and distributary channels. Not only will this project improve the habitat of fish and wildlife, including Endangered Species Act listed Hood Canal summer chum, but it will also enhance the lives of constituents through reduced seasonal flood risk, safer roads, and job creation. That is a WRDA success story. However, restoring the Duckabush Estuary will change how local tribes and the public can access tidelands and the shellfish resources that they support. One positive but unintended consequence of the original highway at Duckabush was that it created direct foot access to shellfish tidelands and stable conditions favorable for shellfish growth. The Duckabush tidelands are important to several local tribes and to the public, and when the restoration project is completed and the river flows freely, access to the tidelands will be more limited. The Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and their partners are committed to ensuring tideland access opportunities for tribes and for the public, making sure that they remain available on Hood Canal. They're considering other locations nearby that can provide a similar experience for local tribes and other users. And I'm requesting federal language to provide the flexibility needed to allow for creative solutions as part of the partnership with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on aquatic ecosystem restoration. Again, I appreciate your leadership and your consideration of these requests, and I'm happy to provide any additional information as we review them. Thank you again for the opportunity to testify before the committee today, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Ms. Tlaib.
Thank you so much, Chairman, Ranking Member. I sincerely appreciate the opportunity to help bring the voices of my constituents and my residents and neighbors regarding water and the various issues that they're facing with every single year. I'm here once again, obviously to talk about how we can protect our neighbors from flooding and contamination in the water, not just lead, beyond even lead. Our communities, as you all know, are on the front lines of the climate crisis, and these floods are only continuing to get worse and worse every single year. At the same time, we have aging infrastructure that subjects them to various health dangers, mostly, again, for my communities, it's exposure to contaminated drinking water. And you hear from many of our colleagues, we need to move with urgency. I know our neighborhoods in the 12th Congressional District have experienced 1,000-year rainfalls, and some homes have flooded repeatedly. In one neighborhood in my district, 3 times in one spring and summer community. And these are working class, many retirees, auto workers who cannot afford, again, the damage that continues to happen to their homes. In some of our communities, raw sewage flows through the streets. Some of our residents still have water standing in their basements. I still remember knocking on the door of one of my seasoned residents in her mid-70s with FEMA as we went door to door to confirm some of the damage. And she had the sewage water in her basement literally freeze over. She didn't have the resources nor the know-all of how to, again, to address it. We know that, meanwhile, millions of people across southeastern Michigan right now, Chairman, in the country are still getting their water from lead pipes. And we haven't dedicated close enough money or mobilized resources to address this threat as quickly as we need to. Our local communities can't do it on their own. They continue to tell me that over and over again. They are required in Michigan to continue to test tests, and they confirm, again, contamination, but the state and the federal government hasn't been able to do enough to fund the remediation that's needed. I know our flood maps and projections our communities rely on still don't account for our rapidly warming planet and are simply out of date. And the water infrastructure in these communities is unacceptably outdated and inadequate for extreme weather events we now face. As the weather events, again, get worse and worse, our communities need the tools, and this is where you all can come in. This year's WRDA presents an opportunity to equip our communities with improved planning and modern resilient infrastructure in WRDA. And first, I encourage the committee to offer support to Detroit's division of the Army Corps of Engineers for flood study of Rouge River. Rouge River, Mr. Chairman, to all of us, is a watershed in my district, and it impacts a number of communities within the largest populated county in Michigan. And the Rouge touches communities throughout 12th District, but also the 11th and others, as you will hear, as well as the 6th districts and the 13th. So we need to better understand how to mitigate the flooding issues that come from the Rouge River. Second, I urge the committee to adopt language that streamlines the real estate requirements for replacing lead service lines on private property. This is critical. We learned a lot from Flint, and that was one of the issues that continued to come up. So we can finish the job and replace lead service lines all the way up to the resident's home. Third, I am submitting a number of requests in support of the Great Lakes Water Authority's efforts to prevent and mitigate flooding in both specific neighborhoods in my district experiencing repeated flooding events, but always also across southeastern Michigan. And these requests are critical to the resiliency of our region, as you know, is very critical to our country, and investments that cannot come soon enough. Fourth, I'm also submitting requests in support of the Army Corps' priorities for improving the navigation across the Great Lakes, Mr. Chair, which supports billions billions of dollars in economic activity and recreation for our communities across the country, really. And I appreciate the opportunity again for all the members that are here to share the priorities of my constituents and residents and respectively request their inclusion in the 2024 Water Resources Development Act. Thank you.
Thank the gentlelady, Ms. Sauchin.
Thank you, Chairman Rouser, and to Ranking Member Larson. Thank you for hosting Member Day and allowing me to address this committee. I'm here today to discuss an issue that has impacted my constituents since long before I came to Congress, the erosion of the Clarksville shoreline. Since 1963, when the Army Corps of Engineers finished the lock and dam system in the Ohio River, it started redirecting water toward the Indiana shoreline at Clarksville. The resulting erosion has caused the shoreline to recede 100 yards to date. Indiana is quite literally losing pieces of our state and our heritage to the river every single day due to the man-made causes brought on by this Army Corps project. The erosion threatens local businesses, roads, parks, and historical sites, including the George Rogers Clark home site, which marks the spot where Lewis and Clark first met and formed the group that would begin their westward expedition. While this problem has been brought to the attention of the Army Corps of Engineers, and the Corps agrees and recognizes it's a problem, it hasn't given it the attention that it desperately needs. That's why for this year's Water Resources Development Act, I'm requesting that the Army Corps of Engineers prioritize completing the Clarksville Shoreline Stabilization Project. Any further delay to this project risks greater losses to our state, the local community, our infrastructure, and our heritage. Thank you again for allowing me the opportunity to speak on this issue. I look forward to continuing to work with you and your staff on stabilizing this shoreline and protecting this important and historic area to the state of Indiana. I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentlelady, Mr. Newhouse.
Chairman Rouser, Ranking Members Napolitano and Larson, thank you for providing me the opportunity to participate in today's hearing. I'm here today to discuss critical water resources impacting Central Washington, which I believe should be addressed in the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. The policies, studies, and projects authorized by WRDA and executed by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers affect the daily life of my neighbors and constituents in Central Washington. This includes locks and dams that enable navigation and boost recreation, hydropower facilities that generate clean, reliable, and efficient power, and levees that reduce the impact of storms on our communities. Today, I'm going to discuss urban canals of concern, the Othello Water Supply Project and the Lower Snake River Dams. Back in November, I introduced the Urban Canal Modernization Act. If enacted, this legislation would allow the Bureau of Reclamation to authorize a 35% non-reimbursable cost share to aid in repairing and rehabilitating urban canals of concern, which are canals that run through urban areas that could, upon failure, cause significant property damage or loss of life. The arduous task of maintaining and modernizing our outdated urban canal systems is necessary for the safety of our local communities. I urge the committee to include the language from this bill within WRDA. Turning to the Othello Water Supply Project, in Central Washington, there's an increasing demand for water with a corresponding limited supply. To address this issue, we must diversify our water supply to alleviate environmental challenges and stabilize water supplies that are vulnerable to drought. The Othello Water Supply Project will do this by creating an aquifer storage and recovery water treatment plant aimed at conveying water underground, storing it, and then recovering it for conventional use. I respectfully request the committee support the authorization of new resources necessary for the development of this project to ensure Central Washington has a reliable, long-term, clean water supply. And lastly, most importantly, I want to turn to the Columbia River System Operations, or the CRSO, and the Lower Snake River Dams. Over the last several years, the Biden administration, alongside dam breaching advocates and several indigenous sovereign nations, have engaged in litigation and mediation over the CRSO. In December of 2023, this culminated in a final package of actions and commitments from the administration, which, if implemented, will, in my opinion, operationally and functionally breach the lower Snake River dams, spur exorbitant ratepayer increases, and cause harm to the salmon population. The overall CRSO, and especially the lower Snake River dams, provide immeasurable benefits to millions of Americans across the Pacific Northwest, providing flood control and irrigation, transportation of agricultural goods to our ports, baseload renewable power, and much more. Recreationists, farmers, river-dependent ports and communities, transportation stakeholders, and electricity customers would be irreparably damaged if the lower Snake River dams are breached. As such, I staunchly oppose the inclusion of any language in WRDA which would operationally or physically breach the lower Snake River dams, as well as any aid for federal agencies in implementing the Columbia Basin Restorative Initiative. In the coming days, I will be submitting my formal request to the committee, and as you craft the base text for this legislation in the months ahead, I encourage you to take these vital interests into consideration. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Are there any questions so far for the panelists we've heard from? Seeing none, you are free to leave. We'll certainly keep all your testimony in mind. Mr. Sorensen, you have up to 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you. I want to begin by thanking Chairman Rouser and Ranking Member Napolitano for convening this hearing and welcoming member testimony today as you craft the important legislation, the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. For every American, WRDA represents one of the best federal opportunities to respond to disasters, to protect our waterways, and support clean water and healthy ecosystems. I'm proud to represent the 17th Congressional District of Illinois. My district sits along the great Mississippi River and is home to dozens of agricultural communities that depend on the Mississippi to move their goods to market. The Army Corps of Engineers and local communities along the river work hand in hand to maintain and upgrade river water infrastructure. Last year, I joined Chairman Graves in submitting a funding request for the Navigational Ecosystem Sustainability Program, or NESP, to the Appropriations Committee. I was proud to see this program funded at $75 million in the House-drafted Energy and Water Appropriations Bill. I thank Chairman Graves for working with me on that request and look forward to the program receiving this round of funding, which would go toward construction of Lock and Dam number 25 on the Upper Mississippi. Part of the bipartisan infrastructure law was intended to fund the construction of Lock and Dam 25 and 6 other projects to completion. However, this funding is not sufficient to cover the full cost. Without additional clarification from Congress, completion of these products will be delayed as local funding source cannot cover the gap. I urge the committee to include language in WRDA 24 to clarify that all 7 of these projects be fully federally funded as intended under the bipartisan infrastructure law. Many members of the committees we represent might not know that WRDA offers more local support than funding for infrastructure along the Mississippi River. Now, my district is home to dozens of drinking water and wastewater agencies that serve the people of central and northwestern Illinois. These agencies are in need of funding to support necessary upgrades and repairs to their systems to protect the communities and the people that we serve. For this reason, I'm pleased that the committee will accept environmental infrastructure requests for WRDA 24. The need for these authorizations is clear. For example, very small town, German Valley, Illinois, in my district, pays $2,000 a month for chemical treatments to address contamination in their wastewater lagoon because they can't afford the larger infrastructure investment needed to address the problem head on. Now, the town of Savannah, Illinois, a community that is underneath the bluffs of the Mississippi River, has an aging drinking water pipe that's running underneath a very heavy and old retaining wall. Now, should the wall crumble, or if the pipe were to fail, half of the community of Savannah, Illinois would be without drinking water. So I look forward to submitting these and other worthy projects for your consideration. So thank you again to the committee for the important opportunity to testify on these important issues, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman. Are there any questions for Mr. Soares? Seeing none, appreciate your testimony. You're free to leave.
Thank you, Chairman.
Ms. Fletcher, you're recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As a former member of this committee, I am proud of and excited about the work that we have done together and the things that we have accomplished in the previous Water Development Resources Acts. And I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today and testify about my community's priorities for water infrastructure investment in Houston, Harris County, and Fort Bend County in the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. I've submitted to the committee several priorities, including project-specific policy changes and authorizations, and those with broader implications for how the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers operates. There are two main drivers of our priorities, and I know they are priorities of this committee and of this Congress. One, to make our communities safer and more resilient through infrastructure investment, and two, to support economic growth through infrastructure investment. In that first category, I've asked for language to ensure that the Corps' continued focus on completing the Buffalo Bayou and Tributaries Resiliency Study. Congress authorized this study after Hurricane Harvey hit the Gulf Coast in 2017, killing at least 68 people and causing more than $125 billion in damages. The study focuses on the viability of different flood control projects along Buffalo Bayou in my district and the surrounding Addicks and Barker reservoirs. Last Congress, I advocated for an extension of the study so that the Corps would have time to be able to consider all possible solutions fully. With financial support from Harris County and the Corps, and with an extension granted, the study continued. Now, as we face the need for an additional extension, I urge the Corps to continue its focus and complete this study so it can move forward with a project that aligns with community objectives, minimizes adverse environmental and community impacts, and prioritizes resilience. Hurricane Harvey made landfall nearly 7 years ago. It's crucial that we utilize the full expertise and resources of the Corps to complete this study before our next Water Development Resources Act in 2026. The Buffalo Bayou and Tributaries Resiliency Study has been possible because of the ongoing collaboration between the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, Harris County Flood Control District, and local and federal leaders, as well as the public. I look forward to continuing this collaboration and finding resilient water conveyance solutions for Houston, Harris County, Fort Bend County, and all of our region. In the second core category of priorities, I've asked for study authorization for the Houston Ship Channel's Project 12 and policy modifications so that ports and waterways can maintain necessary depths and remain competitive in a global marketplace. As many on the committee may remember, I advocated for the authorization of the Houston Ship Channel's Project 11 in the Water Resources Development Act of 2020. This project widens and deepens the Houston Ship Channel, promoting global trade at the busiest port in the country by total tonnage. This project is expected to be completed ahead of schedule next year. While this is a cause for celebration, we must begin to look ahead and look to the future and other deepening projects to meet the growing size and depth of vessels using the port. In order to begin that process, I've asked the committee to authorize a study on Project 12. Starting this process now will ensure that our federal investments are proactive and timely. This critical project will impact not just the Houston region, but the entire country. I've submitted several other requests to the committee, and I appreciate your consideration of these important requests. I look forward to working with the committee on these projects and much more, and to answering any questions that you may have.
Thank the gentlelady from Texas for her testimony. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The committee will stand in a brief recess.
Kind of usually has that basket to put his testimony in. Just hold it.
The committee will come back to order. Mr. Carter, our great colleague from Georgia, you have up to 5 minutes to present your testimony.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and Ranking Member for this opportunity to address this committee. Appreciate it very much. This is extremely important. Thank you, and thank you for considering my testimony. As the Committee on Transportation and Infrastructure continues its work this Congress, especially with WRDA. As a representative of the entire coast of Georgia, over 100 miles of pristine coastline, WRDA is an extremely important piece of legislation for my constituents. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers projects throughout our district have allowed us to grow and prosper over the years. The most significant project, of course, has been the Savannah Harbor Expansion Project, SHEP, which has been an extraordinary success story for our state and region. Completed in March of 2022, SHEP deepened the Savannah Harbor to 47 feet to allow larger ships from all around the globe to access the Port of Savannah. This has allowed the Port of Savannah to be the single largest and fastest growing container terminal in America, in addition to being the second largest port in the East Coast by volume. In fiscal year 2022, it moved 5.8 million 20-foot equivalent container units in throughput, an increase of 8.1% when compared to the previous year. None of this would have been possible without the work done here on the T&I Committee and the authorizations for SHEP through WRDA. I thank the committee for its continued support for a project that is bringing true benefits to our country. According to a Corps of Engineers study, the project is expected to net more than $291 million in annual benefits to the nation, or approximately $7.70 for every dollar invested in the project. Georgia's deep water ports and inland barge terminals support nearly 561,000 jobs throughout the state annually and contribute $33 billion in income, $140 billion in sales, and $3.8 billion in state and local taxes to Georgia's economy. However, for all the benefits this project has already brought, the world is changing rapidly, and ships continue to only get bigger and bigger. That's why I'm asking for the committee to include authorization for a new feasibility study or modification to an existing study authorization to examine the benefit of both widening and deepening the harbor of the Port of Savannah to better accommodate today's commercial demands and to prepare for meeting tomorrow's trade needs. The recently completed dredging under SHEP was designed for vessels with an 8,200 TEU capacity, and the Port of Savannah is currently accommodating ships holding more than 16,000 TEUs on a tidally restricted basis. With the Georgia Department of Transportation raising the height of the Talmadge Bridge, the Port of Savannah's air draft capacity increases significantly, opening the door to serve even larger vessels and increase its significant positive impact on America's economy. My next request for the committee is for Tybee Island, which sits down the river from the Port of Savannah and is an important barrier island for our coast. While the growth of the Port of Savannah has been welcome, the federal channel has directly contributed to the erosion on the island and in persistent need of renourishment. That's why I'm requesting authorization for a new feasibility study incorporating the results of the Channel Impact Study that would lead to the development of a project to adequately solve or mitigate the erosions of Tybee Island's beaches. Next, I'd like to request that the committee consider the authorization of a GAO on the benefits of digital project delivery for the U.S. Army Corps. With the savings that digital infrastructure tools provide and the hundreds of different projects that the Corps engages in each year around the country. Digital infrastructure technologies are cloud-based open data computer platforms that integrate digital technology throughout the life cycle of an infrastructure asset. These technologies are proven and utilized around the world for infrastructure projects to reduce project costs, accelerate project delivery, and build more innovative, resilient, and sustainable assets, including water infrastructure projects. Such a study should hopefully demonstrate the savings that digital infrastructure tools can provide to the hundreds of different studies and projects that the Corps engages in each year around the country. Lastly, I ask the committee to provide Environmental Infrastructure Assistance Authority for the coastal Georgia counties of Bryan, Camden, Chatham, Effingham, Glenn, and McIntosh. Under WRDA, the U.S. Army Corps is authorized to provide assistance with design and construction of infrastructure in specific municipalities, counties, and states. This assistance supports publicly owned and operated facilities such as water distribution works, stormwater collection, and environmental restoration, among others. Adding authority for these counties would provide an opportunity to help these communities with some of their drinking, stormwater, wastewater, and other flooding problems. Thank you again for your time and your consideration of these important issues for my district, the state, and the country. I look forward to continuing to work with the committee to ensure the inclusion of these requests that will bring significant benefits to our communities and to our country.
Thank the gentleman for his testimony. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. Mr. Donalds, great to see you here. Look forward to your testimony. You have up to 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman Rouser, Vice Chair Napolitano. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to be here. I want to discuss 3 topics with you today. Number 1, water quality. Number 2, transportation. And number 3, nuclear energy. I represent Florida's 19th Congressional District, which covers Lee County and Collier County of Southwest Florida. My district is full of environmental treasures, such as white sandy beaches, lakes, rivers, streams, creeks, not to mention a wide variety of unique aquatic specimens that call these water bodies home. The quality of the water impacts my constituents and our local economy on a daily basis, hence why water is my office's #1 priority. I want to make the committee aware of a few bills that I'm leading to improve water quality in my district and across the United States of America. First, I introduced a Water Quality and Environmental Innovation Act on a bipartisan basis with Representative Gottheimer of New Jersey. This bill takes unused funding that lacks a designated purpose from the EPA's Motor Vehicle and Engine Compliance Program for the purpose of issuing grants and contracts to fund projects that seek to use emerging technologies to combat water quality and other related challenges. Innovative technologies may include artificial intelligence, robotics, distributed ledger technology, eDNA, quantum, etc. This bill takes an outside-the-box approach to remedy potential water quality concerns such as harmful algal blooms, sea level rise, acidification, accumulation of trash and plastics, etc. Next, I previously introduced another bipartisan bill called the Combat Harmful Algal Blooms Act. This bill is simple. It adds harmful algal blooms to be eligible for major disaster funding under the Stafford Act. To illustrate the importance of this to Lee County's economy, Lee County's fishing industry has a value of $618 million. An economic loss from harmful algal blooms can equate to $195 million. Lee County's coastal economic output is $11.1 billion. Harmful algal blooms can cost my area $3 billion. Lee County's property values near the coast is roughly $19.1 billion. Economic losses from harmful algal blooms can equate to $3.8 billion. I would also note that I'm introducing a bill in the near future called the Convert Harmful Algal Blooms to Fuels Act, which is another bill that takes a unique approach to combating Florida's water quality challenges. Briefly, this bill builds upon the Army Corps' Habitats program to take aquatic algal biomass and convert such algae into alternative fuels or biofuels. As a Floridian, I welcome an opportunity to turn oranges into orange juice, and this bipartisan bill actually would incorporate a similar train of thought. Next, I would urge the committee to consider another bipartisan bill I introduced called the Short Line Railroad Relief Act. There is approximately 600 short line freight railroads in the United States, most being owned and operated by small businesses. The Seminole Gulf Railway is the one that's in Southwest Florida in Congressional District 19. This was actually subject to damage from Hurricane Ian, so time is of the essence to try to repair that railway line so that our local economy can get back on track as quickly as possible. Finally, I've introduced several bills related to nuclear energy in this Congress. A few of them have been referred to your committee chairman. Nuclear is the cleanest option in America's energy arsenal. nuclear is a bipartisan issue. I know a lot of our colleagues up here on Capitol Hill have a desire to release or eliminate carbon emissions. Nuclear power is the engine to make that a reality and take it from the talking points to something that is tangible for all Americans. Specifically, I introduced a bill that would require the development of a national strategy to deploy nuclear microreactors after natural disasters hit. Finally, I would like to leave the committee with this innovative thought. Across the street from this hearing room is the U.S. Capitol Power Plant. The facility provides chilled water and high-temperature steam to the Capitol complex. Today, we're seeing many of these coal facilities being retired, and unfortunately, there's currently a huge opportunity to revitalize retired coal facilities with advanced nuclear technology due to the compatibility of such energy infrastructure. Now imagine a statement Congress could make to the nuclear industry, American communities, and the world if we look at utilizing advanced nuclear power reactors to power the United States Capitol. I think it would send an amazing message of what Congress is prepared to do and how we can lead the United States and the world. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. Committee will go into a brief recess. Committee will come back to order. Mr. Mullen, we will start with you whenever you're ready. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members, for the opportunity. On New Year's Eve of 2022, my home state of California saw firsthand the dangers of climate change. Unprecedented flooding from several atmospheric rivers wreaked havoc, causing damage to private property, public infrastructure, and disrupting the lives of many of my constituents, including on their private property. District residents in the city of San Mateo, who really have never experienced storms quite like this, are now facing catastrophic losses. To quote one constituent regarding their experience, I've lived in San Mateo for 33 years. It has never, ever flooded. About 4 hours after it started, I was in vain attempting to bail out my house. The data shows we need to address flooding in my district to address the frequency of these so-called 100-year flood events. That is why I have respectfully submitted to the committee a request for a feasibility study of flood control and stormwater runoff reduction measures to be taken in San Mateo. These efforts will protect this city from future extreme weather events. Frankly, we know this is a problem nationwide. Communities everywhere are finding it challenging to work within the authorized dollar amounts for continuing authority programs. A common sense policy change that I am submitting to the committee is to modestly adjust these amounts for inflation and regional cost differences. This adjustment would better support projects across the country, including in my own district, where there is also an ongoing effort to protect the bayfront city of East Palo Alto and the San Francisco Creek, which runs right through that community. This project, if funded properly, would significantly reduce the risk of flooding for over 4,000 households. Please consider the impact these requests will have on the way communities across the country respond to extreme weather. Thank you for your time. and for your work on this year's act.
Thank the gentleman. Are there any questions for the gentleman? Seeing none, thank you again for your testimony. Ms. Luna, you're recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you. My district is home to many pristine beaches along the Gulf of Mexico. It is my utmost priority to ensure beach renourishment continues in my community, and that is exactly why I'm here before you today. For the entirety of last year, my office has begun fighting with the Army Corps of Engineers over the decision to not move forward with the renourishment of the Sand Key Beach project in Pinellas County. The initial construction effort for Sand Key was completed in 1993. Successive renourishments took place in 1999, 2006, 2012, and 2018, and they have significantly repaired the beach and also built up the shoreline to up to 200 feet from the seawall. Renourishment needs to take place every 6 years in order for this area to be maintained. However, the Army Corps has informed Pinellas County that local officials must obtain over 100% of property owner rights in order for beach access to take place. This is obviously not fair, being that we can even, at this current time, attain over 40%. Despite perpetual easements not being required by law, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers insists that it must require all access in order to move forward, and this is also impacting the areas of Treasure Island and Long Key. For previous renourishments, Pinellas County property owners were allowed to sign temporary construction easements to allow the Army Corps to do its work. Army Corps also stated that the agency intends to start enforcing its new policy, purportedly from 1996, but not enforced over the last 2 decades. Section 103D of the 1986 Water Resources Development Act, WRDA, requires the local sponsors to pay for Sand Key placed on private property. The Army Corps of Engineers' new interpretation of this 40-year-old law is that they will not replace the public side of the sand, which is seaward of the erosion control line, unless perpetual public access is required from property owner rights on the landward side of the erosion control line in order for local sponsors to pay 100% of the costs. Basically, this policy is out of date. What's happening is our community is impacted by it. They're citing a policy that hasn't been enforced for over 20 years, and now they're saying that if we don't basically hand over our private property rights, what's going to happen is we're not going to get help. It's going to impact our tourism. It's going to basically ensure that these property owners are going to have their property completely destroyed, not to mention we have natural habitat for some endangered species that's also going to be impacted by it. The Army Corps has been playing games. We've been trying to reach out to them. They haven't responded to any of our phone calls. I know that I'm not the only member that's facing this problem. They're doing this to other members as well. And I find it ironic that it's also in red states. So I'm asking for your help to change this policy so that they can no longer do this to our community.
Thank the gentlelady. Duly noted. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. Mr. LaLota?
Thank you, Chairman Rouser and Ranking Member Napolitano, for hosting this important hearing today and for allowing me to testify in front of the committee. I would like to take some time today to address 2 issues. First, an issue critical to my district back home on Long Island, reauthorizing the Long Island Sound Program. In 1985, Congress created the Long Island Sound Study, also commonly referred to as the Long Island Sound Program, to identify and address the major environmental and ecological problems affecting the Long Island Sound. The Long Island Sound Program was authorized at $40 million annually through the Long Island Sound Restoration Act, and through this legislation, a bi-state comprehensive management plan has been developed and continues to be implemented. In 2006, Congress also passed the Long Island Sound Stewardship Act, which provided federal dollars to projects to restore the coastal habitat to help revitalize the wildlife population, coastal wetlands, and plant life. In 2018, the Long Island Sound Restoration and Stewardship Act, which combined the reauthorized the 2 complementary water quality and habitat restoration programs, was enacted as part of the America's Water Infrastructure Act. As of 2022, federal funding for the Long Island Sound has enabled programs to significantly reduce the amount of nitrogen entering the Long Island Sound from the sewage treatment plants by 70.3% compared to the 1990s, reduce hypoxic conditions by 58% compared to the 1990s, and restore at least 2,239 acres of coastal habitat and fund 570 conservation projects. In FY23, the Long Island Sound received $40 million, the largest funding level in the history of the program. The House and Senate have both included $40 million for the Long Island Sound in their FY24 appropriations bills, and we are extremely grateful for that. But none of this matters unless the program is reauthorized. And while my good friend from the other side of the aisle and the other side of the Long Island Sound, Connecticut Congressman Courtney and I have introduced legislation, H.R. 5441, the Long Island Sound Restoration and Stewardship Act of 2023, to reauthorize the program, we believe this legislation can and should be included in a WRDA package. I look forward to continue to work with this committee to get this important program reauthorized, and thank you for the support that you've already shown. The second issue I wanted to address quite quickly is an issue of local concern that has been going on in my district for quite some time, a crumbling seawall in the village of Asheroken. The village of Asheroken connects the communities of Eaton's Neck to the rest of the town of Huntington through a narrow road. Due to weather conditions and the elevation of the road, there are times when the road has completely flooded, leaving stranded entire communities. A brief survey of the seawall recently demonstrated a devastating scouring of the beach, and with every storm, the situation has become more and more dire for the local residents there. This has resulted in tow stones dropping, exposure of more sheet steel, and exposing the wall to total failure. This could result in total loss of the road as well. Currently, there's red tape that's preventing the residents of Asheroken and Eaton's Neck from getting the help they need to fortify the seawall and ensure the community is not stranded when even a minor weather event occurs. I look forward, Chairman, Ranking Member, to working with this committee and the Army Corps of Engineers to find a solution to this issue, and I hope you would agree that my constituents deserve nothing less. Thank you so much for your indulgence.
Thank the gentleman. Are there any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. Mr. Iyer, you're up for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ranking Member. I first want to thank the committee for their work on WRDA in 2022. During the last WRDA Member Day, I spoke to this committee about the importance of continued funding of the Howard Hansen Dam, a project that the entire Washington delegation supports that will provide downstream fish passage, safe drinking water, and critical habitat restoration for endangered salmon species. We were able to include authorization of the necessary funds for project completion in the 2022 WRDA, so thank you for that work. Today, I'd like to speak with you first about my bipartisan bill, the WIFIA amendments of 2023. As you know, the Water Infrastructure Finance and Innovation Act program, or WIFIA, is a federal credit program managed by federal agencies for eligible water and wastewater infrastructure projects. Under this program, borrowers, including state, tribal, and federal governments, can apply for low-interest, flexible loans to fund these water infrastructure projects. These loans are invaluable resources that allow local governments to meet the infrastructure needs of their respective communities at an affordable rate. WIFIA loans have had a significant impact throughout the country, and to date, the program has announced $19 billion to finance 109 projects across the country, creating 60,000 jobs. In Washington State, King County, the City of Tacoma, and Seattle Public Utilities have all received WIFIA loans. King County was invited to apply for a $287 million WIFIA master agreement, which helped fund several projects, including the Northwest Lake Sammamish Interceptor upgrade and the Sammamish Plateau Diversion Project. Now, despite its importance and its significant impact on water infrastructure, the program has not been modified since its inception in 2014. In addition to reauthorizing the program through 2027, my bipartisan bill would update and improve WIFIA by removing barriers of entry for rural community water projects. This is an exciting and important opportunity to help rural communities access critical loans and long-term stable funding for water infrastructure. This keeps our water clean, ensures a supply of safe drinking water, keeps costs low for ratepayers, and is particularly important for the smallest communities. So I request that this bill be considered by this committee in the 2024 WRDA, or at least in future committee activity. With my remaining time, I'd like to speak in support of one particular project that I'll be submitting for the city of Chelan in my district. To paint a picture of the city of Chelan, it is mountains with one of the deepest lakes in the entire world right in the middle. The problem is that In 2015, Washington experienced the worst wildfire season in the state's recorded history, and this included the Chelan Complex fires. It is smack in the middle of what we consider one of the highest risk fire sheds in the country. This destroyed 75 homes and businesses nearby, and the risk of similar fires is only increasing. So seeing a serious gap in wildfire preparedness, the City of Chelan has proposed constructing a water reservoir at a higher elevation for both wildfire resilience and for water supply. The current system relies on booster pump stations to distribute water over increasing elevation and distance from the lake. The system contains some serious risks. Water, the failure of these pump stations, which can happen in a wildfire, could disrupt water distribution to the eastern side of the city and could impact firefighting abilities. To counter this vulnerability, the city seeks to build a new 1 million gallon water reserve, a reservoir in East Chelan. The reservoir will assist in mitigating future wildfire risks associated with their unique geographic and infrastructure challenges, and I'll be submitting an authorization request for $9 million for the construction phase of this project. I want to thank you for your consideration, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank the gentlelady for her testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
Ms. Bazinski,
Thank you,
you're
Chair.
recognized.
Thank you, Chairman Rouser, and thank you, Ranking Member Napolitano, for holding this hearing today and to hear from members on our priorities for the upcoming reauthorization of WRDA. As a representative for Central and Southern Illinois, I have the honor of serving communities outside of St. Louis in the Metro East region, communities that have struggled with the consequences of inadequate infrastructure for far too long. In Cahokia Heights, local residents have been dealing with a flooding, sewage, and drinking water crisis for decades, eroding home values and putting folks' health and safety at risk. I was proud to secure an EPA coordinator to help us resolve this issue, and the Army Corps of Engineers has worked collaboratively with the state of Illinois to address this in the past. But our work is not done. And that's why I am requesting additional support in our next Water Resources Development Act. In WRDA 2024, I'm requesting a feasibility study of the Spring Lake project recommended in the East St. Louis and vicinity ecosystem restoration and flood damage reduction project report to advance this structural project to a pre-construction engineering design phase. This will help communities in my district with flood resilience and reduction and ensure their homes are protected. In addition to completing the study, the flooding issue can be mitigated by modifying the scope and authorization ceiling for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers response. By adding stormwater management to the existing scope of water and wastewater infrastructure assistance, the Army Corps of Engineers will have increased ability to remedy flooding issues as they arise, as well as mitigate future issues. Raising the ceiling from $100 to $200 million will also allow the Army Corps enhanced capability to respond to these issues. The Mississippi River also serves as a vital waterway to growers and producers in my congressional district, allowing them to get their goods to market. The bipartisan infrastructure law funded 7 inland waterway construction projects. Even so, infrastructure law funds alone will be insufficient to complete any of these critical projects that Congress intended the IIJA fund to complete. Unless modified in WRDA 2024, the disparity between projected costs reflected in BIL funding levels and subsequent real-world project costs threaten to jeopardize and delay critical ongoing and planned capital improvements that are desperately and urgently needed to modernize our nation's antiquated inland waterways transportation system, further delaying economic and environmental benefits. Consistent with IIJA congressional intent, I request that we adjust funding levels to ensure that the federal government continues to cover 100% of the cost of the 7 inland waterways construction and major rehabilitation projects. The requests I highlighted today, alongside the others I intend to submit to the committee, will help ensure that the constituents in my district are protected from floods, that the Army Corps of Engineers is well-equipped to address flooding issues, and that our waterways construction and rehabilitation infrastructure is fully funded. Thank you very much, Chairman and Ranking Member, for the opportunity to testify here today, and I thank you in advance for considerations of my request. Thank you. I yield back.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. Mr. Davis, you're recognized for up to 5 minutes.
A huge thanks goes out to our distinguished chair from the great state of North Carolina, Mr. Rouser.
I've heard of that state.
And to our ranking member, Napolitano, thank you. And all the members of this distinguished committee for allowing me to speak on issues within the Water Resources Development Act that matter to residents of North Carolina's 1st Congressional District. Since assuming office last January, one of the top issues voiced by constituents has been the significant impact of flooding throughout eastern North Carolina. This issue underscores the need to develop effective flood risk management and mitigation tools. Addressing these challenges is essential in safeguarding our communities and enhancing the resilience of eastern North Carolina against the detrimental effects of flooding. Flooding is a recurring issue in eastern North Carolina due to frequent hurricanes, tropical storms, and heavy rainfall. Our region consistently ranks in the top 10 for years of rainfall, making flood management a pressing concern. Flooding across eastern North Carolina often ruins crop fields, destroys homes, and tears apart roads. Families have had to rebuild their lives time and time again. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been and remains an invaluable ally in combating the water overflows affecting our communities. I express my support for 2 projects under their administration and oversight in North Carolina's 1st Congressional District. First, the Tar-Pamlico River Basin Project, and second, the Princeville, North Carolina Project. These initiatives play a crucial role in enhancing our resilience and strengthening our region against the challenges posed by water-related issues. The Tar-Pamlico River Basin Project centers around a specific study area encompassing river reaches along the Tar River and its major tributaries. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers recommends efforts to elevate or dry flood-proof 160 structures within the 4 major population centers of Greenville, Tarboro, Rocky Mount, and Nashville. This initiative aims to reduce the impact on structures and infrastructure while mitigating the associated life safety risk. The ongoing Princeville project seeks to mitigate flood risk in Princeville, North Carolina. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers prioritizes minimizing damage to structures and infrastructure and reducing the risk to life safety associated with flooding. Princeville faced frequent and severe flooding until it initiated a levee project in 1967 under the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers Section 205 Continuing Authorities Program. The project is rooted in the design event referencing back to the historic flood in 1919. Unfortunately, Hurricanes Flood in 1999 and Matthew in 2016 surpassed this threshold, resulting in a catastrophic flooding for the town and the substantial loss of residences and other structures. Princeville is essential to the historical roots of eastern North Carolina. It was the first town in the United States founded by formerly enslaved people and was the first independently governed African-American community chartered in the United States. For these reasons, we need to protect Princeville and its residents. While the Water Resources Development Act of 2024 does not require reauthorizing these projects, it is essential to emphasize their importance in protecting communities across eastern North Carolina. I genuinely appreciate the opportunity to testify before the committee today on the critical issues impacting my constituents. I look forward to continued partnership with the members of this committee. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Any questions for the gentleman from North Carolina? Seeing none, thank you again. Mr. Costa, you're recognized for up to 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Rauscher, and Ranking Member Napolitano. Always good to be here in the committee with an opportunity to share my thoughts on projects that I think are important to the people of the 21st Congressional District of the San Joaquin Valley. Holding this hearing obviously gives members an opportunity to discuss their priorities for the 2024 Resources Development Act. As a member that's been around for a while, I do appreciate the committee sticking to the traditional bipartisan WARDA process and committing to work in a bipartisan manner. The three of us know that that's how you really get things done, and I appreciate that very much. I want to talk about, obviously, as my fellow colleagues have already spoken on behalf of their districts, the people that I represent in the heart of the San Joaquin Valley. We like to say that we grow food that feeds the world, and that we have a saying that where water flows, food grows. Therefore, water supply and reliability, the sustainability, especially in light of climate change, is critical factor to our region's health and economic well-being, but also to put food on America's dinner table every night. We grow half the nation's fruits and vegetables, 90% of the processed tomatoes, 75% of the world's almonds, 20% of the milk produced in the nation. The list goes on and on and on. But projects that were developed in the 20th century, both at the federal level and state projects, combined with local projects, have allowed us to create this incredible cornucopia of food that we rely on. And food, we don't think about it oftentimes, but food is a national security issue. It really is. And to think about this great country, the greatest country in the world, and less than 4% of our nation's population, less than 4% is directly involved in the production of food and fiber. It's an amazing story. So these water projects are a key essential foundation to ensuring that water supply. Pine Flat Dam, built in the early 1950s by the Army Corps of Engineers, is one of those examples. This proposal before the committee is to raise Pine Flat Dam. It currently holds at full capacity 1 million acre-feet of water. By simply modifying the floodgates, not raising the dam, but modifying the floodgates, we could increase the capacity over 120,000 acre-feet of additional storage, improving storage management in the face of climate extremes like intense floods and droughts. It seems to be in California, but other parts of the country where we have incredible water, rain, snow, more than we can handle, and then extreme periods of drought. We just came in California in the West Coast with 3 consecutive years of extreme drought. And we prayed and we prayed and we prayed for rain and snow in the mountains. And we must have prayed really good, because last year we had record amounts of rain and snowfall to the point where we had floods. And that was a challenge. But you know, on the Colorado River that provides water for a lot of the western states, the Lake Mead Hoover Dam that we're all familiar with has not been filled since 2000. So the world has changed. What we thought was a 17 million acre-feet of yield on the Colorado River on an average 10-year basis, we're now determining is more like 10 to 12 million acre-feet on a 10-year average. And that has dramatic impact for upper basin states and lower basin states. So additional benefits to increase opportunities when we do have flood levels and above average rainfall allows us to plan to recharge our groundwater, to restore our overdraft aquifers. Representative Napolitano has been very active in Southern California and elsewhere where they have successfully recharged aquifers that have been depleted. And that provides water for municipal supply as well as for agricultural supply. And we're really beginning to do a much better job, I think, in recharging our groundwater in rural areas than we have in the past. The feasibility study for raising Pine Flat Dam, to get back to the point, was included in the core 2023 section report 7001, and I look forward to continuing to advance this important project through the WARDA process and any other avenues that are available. As I spoke a moment ago about how climate change is impacted with weather patterns, with extreme droughts or extreme floods, I want to let the committee know that your support in recent years for the Forecast Information Reservoir Operations effort, otherwise known as FARO, has been very helpful. Scripps Institute, a noted research development in the country, has done some tremendous research in forecasting where we get these atmospheric storms to a degree to figure out how to plan for them. Last year in January and then subsequently again in March, we had an incredible amount of these atmospheric storms that Scripps has monitored and others. This has allowed them to use enhanced monitoring and improved weather forecasting to more responsibly operate reservoirs in changing conditions, and that what we have to be noted. Projects using FARO and additional flexibility have seen notable increase in water supply and storage benefits during times of drought. And given these promising results, I think we should expand FARO for more reservoirs, including Bureau of Reclamation projects around the country. I mean, I'll give you an example. Again, in California, my time's expired.
The gentleman's time is over by almost 2 minutes.
Okay, well, let me just close quickly. There are a lot of opportunities here, and the environmental infrastructure authorization also, I want to note to the committee, for Fresno and Tulare counties to authorize both counties in my district to be included in new geographical areas for eligible environmental infrastructure assistance. With that, I thank the committee for your patience and for extending me a couple more minutes. God bless you. Happy
You're a good
New Year.
man, Jim Costa. Any questions for Mr. Costa? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Moylan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, ranking member, members of the committee, and staff for putting together this Water Resource Development Act, WARDA. My office has submitted several study proposals across a wide range of issues. And I'm truly very excited about the chance to come before you today because I've been told that the Army Corps of Engineers has never completed a WARDA project on Guam. Never. First time. So while Guam already has funding authorized, there's money there for the potential future projects, there's no relevant study that has been introduced or completed to help clarify where this funding is best described. So we have the solution. And wish to let you know our highest priority of the project is to increase the raw water storage capabilities at what is known as the UGM Surface Water Treatment Plant on Guam. And this is under the Guam Water Works Authority, who I've been working closely with my staff to identify our #1 project. The UGM Surface Water Treatment Plant, in its current state, the plant's capabilities are insufficient during times of drought or in heavy rainfall, whether dry season or rainy season, it's not working. So these shortcomings are a result of outdated machinery and security system that is desperately in need of modernization. Guam's a long way away from CONUS, and it's about 3,000 miles away from Hawaii. We're closer to Taiwan than we are to Hawaii. So building a critical infrastructure on Guam is significantly more expensive and difficult than it is here in the lower 48 due to the tyranny of distance and also the Buy America laws that vastly inflate the already high cost of goods on Guam. So this means opportunities like WARDA projects are crucial for improving critical infrastructure for our island. We know that Guam's role is a vital part of United States national security matrix. But what that also means is that the People's Republic of China sanctioned hackers are looking for every opportunity to infiltrate our critical infrastructure. Water infrastructure is high on the target list. So in addition to providing basic water needs, this project proposes, if enacted, will increase our water security on island for natural disasters and malign foreign actors. So, Mr. Chairman, I thank you for the opportunity to speak today, and I look forward to working really close for the delivery of the first water project for Guam, the Ugam Surface Water Treatment Plant, as our top priority. I thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank the gentleman. Any questions for the gentleman? Seeing none, thank you again. Ms. Garcia, you're recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and ranking member, for having me today again at Member Day. I know I did this last year, and I always look forward to it. My home city.
If you don't mind, bring that microphone a little closer to you.
My home city of Houston sits at the epicenter of global trade. In 2023, it was named the top U.S. city for international business by Financial Times. That reputation is due in no small part to the continued success of Port Houston, the nation's busiest deepwater port. Every year, Port Houston has as many ship calls as the next 3 largest U.S. ports combined, and it accounts for over $900 billion in national economic value. In the years since the pandemic, the port has rebounded with explosive growth in trade, both in imports and exports. But the port can't rest on its laurels. To keep the United States competitive in the global supply chain, the port must accept larger and larger vessels, and for that, they're literally going to have to dig deep, literally. That's why I'm here today, Mr. Chairman. I come to you to request that the committee take up an item with clear bipartisan support across the Houston region for the Army Corps to assume maintenance of Project 12. Project 12 would widen, deepen, and dredge the port so that it may continue to safely accept vessels as they transit along the Buffalo Bayou. Doing so would continue a legacy of cost sharing that has defined the port from the very start. Fun fact, Mr. Chairman, Port Houston was the first port in the nation to be fairly cost shared with local buy-in. And in the decades since, the port has grown to be a shining example of the benefits such an arrangement can have. Additionally, to ensure safe transit in this new age of shipping, the port must also look beyond the bayou into the barge channels of the Galveston Bay, which I hope will be the focus of a new feasibility study to secure an additional 12 feet of draft for larger barges. This project's priorities garner enormous benefits, not only for my district, but for the entire nation. The port is a keystone of American critical infrastructure, and it's quite literally fueling America. Additionally, we must keep pushing for support of the Gulf Coast seawall barrier, which folks back home call the Ike Dike. Barriers like the Ike Dike are life-saving engineering projects. They protect against the loss of life from a deadly storm surge and the loss of livelihoods from a flood, something that communities in the Houston region know all too well. Hurricane Harvey cost nearly $125 billion in damages, and before that, Hurricane Ike cost $38 billion in damages across several states, including Texas. Studies show similar barrier systems to have a near immediate return on investment. Those are words that are hard to come by in government. I've seen them firsthand from New Orleans to the Netherlands. We must ensure our area has the resources it needs to protect the manufacturing, retail, farming, business, and military supply chains in the Houston and Galveston region. Doing so is important, it is critical, not just for our local community, but also for those important sectors in Texas and throughout the country. I urge my colleagues to include these priorities in the passage of the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. I thank this subcommittee and the full committee for their work. on these critical issues. And as usual, my office stands ready, together with Port Houston, to answer any questions that you may have. I know the staff will be working with us on a number of them. But Mr. Chairman, I thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Any questions for the gentlelady from Texas? Seeing none, thank you again. Mr. Pascrell, you're recognized for up to 5 minutes. Bring that microphone up a little bit for you. The microphone, bring it up.
Okay.
I think so, it's just not close to you. There you go.
I want to thank you, Chairman and Ranking Member, for the opportunity to testify in support of my Water Resources Development Act priorities. When I came to the Congress 25 years ago, this was my first committee. It seems like yesterday. I submitted detailed written testimony for the record, which I will outline today. I'd like to first recognize my New Jersey delegation colleagues, Representatives Payne and Representative Menendez, who are fierce advocates for our great state on the full committee. Flooding is a recurring problem in my state with severe consequences for communities in the Passaic River Basin. My hometown of Paterson recently declared another state of emergency, and residents were evacuated from heavy rainfall, causing the river to overflow, the Passaic River. After the river is again in flood stage, it is expected to crest later this afternoon. I'm requesting the committee support a comprehensive study by the Army Corps of Engineers to examine measures to improve flood mitigation, river navigation, and environmental sustainability on the Passaic River. I can't say enough, in the 25 years I've been in this Congress, of an agency that has been more responsive than the Army Corps of Engineers. And we've had good fights with each other, but let me tell you, they've done their job and they've listened within the resources that we provide for them. Within Paterson Great Falls Park, there is the historic water raceway system. I hope the committee will honor my request for an Army Corps study on how they can help make the raceway system operable. The city of Garfield, across the river from Passaic, has several issues related to the Fleischers Brook, including flooding, flash flooding, and collapsed water mains. Very dangerous situations. An Army Corps study is needed to assess these flooding risks at Fleischers Brook. In the borough of Hasbrook Heights, the Berries Creek tributary has been plagued by chronic flooding. I hope that the committee will support my request for a study of Berries Creek to devise solutions to these issues. During the great storm of 12 years ago, it was a disaster, that whole area. Additionally, numerous municipalities in northern New Jersey are adversely impacted by flooding in the lower Saddlebrook Basin area, where there are a number of known contaminated sites. You have all the detailed information I provided for the committee to be a lot more specific. The lower Saddle River Basin area, and there's a number of known contaminated sites. Saddle River is in its worst flood stage in many years. Right now, my staff was with the governor to witness the destruction in Lodi yesterday, and we need to redouble our efforts here. The Army Corps has the capacity to provide remediation services to address this contamination. I encourage the committee to work with my office to explore ways the Army Corps could perform cleanup while the non-federal sponsor remains financially responsible. Finally, I urge the committee to support the Army Corps and the non-federal sponsor of the Lower Saddle River Flood Protection Project and identifying component parts of the project that may have long-standing benefits. And I want to thank you for your time. I know it's been a long day. It's been a longer day. I got to run back to my committee. In consideration of my requests, I look forward to working with the committee to ensure that the priorities of New Jersey's 9th District are sufficiently addressed. And I yield back. Mr. Chairman, you have any questions, I'll gladly answer them.
I thank the gentleman, and the chairman will note here that you and I have a lot of similar issues, so look forward to working with you to address those. Any questions for the gentleman? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
Mr. Garbarino, you are recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Good afternoon, good morning, whatever it is. Chairman Rouser and Ranking Member Napolitano. I'm here today to respectfully request the inclusion of critical authorization language for my district in the 2024 Water Resources Development Act. In September of 2023, heavy rainfall brought on by a nor'easter washed away significant sections of the Fire Island shoreline. The result was homes were left extremely close to the water, boardwalks are hanging freely in the air, and emergency vehicles were unable to drive on eroded beaches. Coastal erosion on Fire Island has been a problem for decades and threatens critical infrastructure as well as private property. Just a few months ago, a power station on Fire Island was so close to the eroded coastline that emergency protective work had to be completed to prevent it from being compromised and falling into the sea. In Seaview, their local utilities are also susceptible to flooding due to beach erosion, which is now threatening water wells. In addition to serving as home for many of my constituents, Fire Island fulfills an important purpose as a barrier island which protects Long Island from erosion and storms. The Army Corps of Engineers has determined that the weather event that caused this damage does not meet the requirements under PL 8499 for emergency renourishment. Therefore, instead of engaging in emergency renourishment work, the Army Corps will continue in accordance with the Fire Island Inlet to Montauk Point, or FIMP, project schedule. Under this project schedule, renourishment won't take place for a few years. Until then, we are left in limbo with respect to when emergency federal assistance can be provided between scheduled renourishment periods. Each passing storm increases the damage to our shoreline. Just this Tuesday, the town of Babylon notified my office that heavy rainfall had eroded their local beaches so badly that a playground and a pavilion structure were close to being compromised. The day after, I was notified the playground is now unusable and in the sea, and the water has made its way to the pavilion structure. Timely renourishment is necessary to prevent further deterioration. Our communities in Massapequa are similarly threatened by erosion. In the last 2 years, the town of Oyster Bay has spent over $3 million to purchase sand and rebuild Tobay Beach. Without this investment, Tobay would have been compromised as well. The longer we leave these problems unchecked, the greater probability that Long Island will require increased support for infrastructure resiliency projects. If we can address this problem quickly, we can avoid having to address even greater damage in the future. To address this issue, I will be submitting proposed authorization language that will allow renourishment to occur following nor'easters affecting the Fire Island National Seashore and neighboring hamlets in between scheduled periods. My submission is based off a similar authorization that was included in the 2022 Water Resources Development Act for the state of Delaware. The current situation on Fire Island has highlighted the need to create a mechanism for permitting supplemental work outside the typical FIMP renourishment windows should similar damage occur in the future. It is my hope that this year's WRDA can provide Long Island and Fire Island residents with the assistance they so desperately require. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight this incredibly important issue. Yield back.
Thank the gentleman for his testimony. Any questions for the gentleman? Seeing none, thank you again.
Thank you.
Ms. Lee, you're recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Ranking Member Napolitano, for holding today's hearing and for this opportunity to highlight 3 top priorities for Nevada's 3rd Congressional District as you continue to craft the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. No one knows better than a Nevadan just how precious our nation's water resources truly are, especially in southern Nevada, where we get about 90% of our water from the Colorado River. For the community of Laughlin, specifically located in the rural, most southern part of my district, that number jumps to 100%. Laughlin's water treatment and delivery system is the only such system managed by the Las Vegas Valley Water District that both lacks a secondary water source and lags in water storage capacity. This would already be concerning enough, if not compounded by the fact that Laughlin, like many communities in the Southwest, continues to have to contend with the effects of the worst drought in at least 1,200 years. My first request is for authorizing urgent environmental infrastructure assistance for Laughlin's water system in the WRDA 2024 to facilitate the construction of additional storage tanks to ensure adequate reserves, fire flow, and system redundancy, as well as the construction of a new groundwater well to provide a secondary source for the Laughlin community to be able to meet emergency water needs. I'm also asking that this year's WRDA bill include my legislation to raise the funding cap on the Las Vegas Wash system. The Las Vegas Wash is the primary drainage channel for the Las Vegas Valley watershed, carrying about 200 million gallons of water to Lake Mead every single day, a key resource that makes it possible for Southern Nevada to recycle nearly every drop of water that goes down our drains. The federally backed Las Vegas Wash program has been essential to protecting and enhancing the wash by supporting erosion control efforts as well as biological and other restoration activities. Originally authorized more than 2 decades ago in WRDA 2000, raising the program's funding cap in WRDA 2024 will ensure that vital federal assistance for the wash can continue. And finally, I am pleased to join Ranking Member Napolitano in seeking to elevate water supply and water conservation to primary mission areas in the U.S. Corps of Engineers. For too long, these priorities, which only grow more pressing for Southern Nevada with each passing day, have been regarded as ancillary or secondary to other responsibilities of the Corps, such as navigation and flood control. Requiring the Corps to give water supply and conservation equal priority moving forward will strengthen numerous initiatives that stand to benefit Nevada, the West, and the country as a whole, including measures to promote the use of innovative technologies and practices such as forecast-informed reservoir operations and managed aquifer recovery to maximize the availability of water supply opportunities, and the development of drought contingency plans for communities served by the Corps water supply projects. Thank you again, Mr. Chairman, Ranking Member Napolitano, for the opportunity to appear today on this critical legislation. And with that, I yield the balance of my time.
Thank the gentlelady. Are there any questions or comments?
No questions, but just a comment, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Lee, for supporting that mission that we've asked the court to take on. And we hope more members come aboard because it's something that is really necessary for the whole country. Thank you.
I will be carrying the torch in your absence. Thank you.
We thank the gentlelady. Ms. Schultz, you're recognized for up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Rouser and Ranking Member Napolitano. I appreciate the opportunity to have this chance to share how vital the Water Resources Development Act is to America's communities, and especially for Floridians. The Army Corps of Engineers has major ongoing projects throughout South Florida, from restoring the Everglades and investing in our ports, to fighting rising seas by nourishing beaches and managing flood risk. Obviously, the Corps' work is vital to Florida on many urgent fronts. The first item I want to bring to the committee's attention is the Western Everglades Restoration Project. Within the boundaries of the Western Everglades is reservation land that is home to the Miccosukee and Seminole Tribe of Florida. You'll also find Big Cypress National Preserve and a portion of Everglades National Park there. With this watershed providing 40% of the water flowing into Everglades National Park and Florida Bay, it is crucial to authorize the construction of this project in WRDA. To meet the Biden administration's ambitious goals for reducing U.S. greenhouse gas emissions, it is imperative that we adopt a comprehensive approach. One effective lever within reach is the optimization of fuel efficiency in the Corps' existing vehicle fleet. And we don't need to invest billions in new boats and vessels to achieve this. By incorporating real-time emissions measurements and recommending operational and technical efficiency improvements, we can achieve substantial cost savings for American taxpayers while also contributing to environmental conservation. I propose that we include language in this WRDA encouraging the Corps to consider investing in this new technology and to brief Congress on potential opportunities to leverage this technology in the future. Next, I want to highlight that the Corps recently implemented new shore protection policy guidelines. The beach renourishment work the Corps performs along our nation's coastlines is invaluable to our local communities, especially in South Florida. A wide, nourished beach system absorbs wave energy, protects upland areas from flooding, and mitigates erosion. Before the Corps performs work, they need easements from adjacent landowners. That makes sense. We don't want to strip landowners of their property rights. But the Corps changed their policy and now requires non-federal sponsors to acquire perpetual construction easements from 100% of the upland owners within a project footprint. This is a different interpretation than was used in the past 20 to 30 years, and it has placed a number of projects in Broward County and around the country at risk because getting these easements can be difficult. I asked the committee to work with the Corps on finding a solution moving forward that works for everyone, because we cannot let these important projects stall and fail. The Corps' current interpretation of congressional intent is not accurate and was not the interpretation they used for decades. We cannot bring vital beach renourishment to a screeching halt. The last issue I want to bring to the committee's attention is Everglades restoration work performed by the Corps. I asked the committee to include language authorizing the Corps to continue to use and implement the incremental funding clause for large SERP projects like the EAA reservoir. Using incremental funding demonstrably reduces project delivery timelines and costs, saving American taxpayer dollars while also preserving America's Everglades. Additionally, I asked the committee to direct the Corps to provide a report to Congress on the modifications that were made to the design of the EAA reservoir, including the depth and size of the reservoir and why such modifications were necessary. I appreciate the work you put into this legislation and that you give members an opportunity to provide input and feedback in advance of the development of the WRDA bill, and look forward to helping you pass this bill yet again this year. Thank you both so much.
Thank the gentlelady for her testimony. Any questions? Seeing none, thank you again. One item of housekeeping. I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record all written member testimony that was properly provided to the subcommittee in advance of this hearing in accordance with committee rules into the record. Without objection, so ordered. The committee will stand in recess until 1 o'clock.
Good afternoon. The subcommittee meeting will now come back to order. The chairman now recognizes Representative Mary Miller. You have 5 minutes when you turn your mic on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ranking Member Larson, thank you for the opportunity to testify on behalf of Illinois' 15th District. I'm here today to speak in support of my bill, H.R. 5722, the Upper Mississippi River Levee Safety Act, which I strongly urge the committee to consider in the Water Resources Development Act of 2024. Levees along the Upper Mississippi River protect countless homes and thousands of acres of farmland from flooding. They are essential to residents, farmers, and business owners who live and work along the Upper Mississippi. This legislation would give local levee districts along the Upper Mississippi River more flexibility to maintain their systems and allow them to better prepare for future flooding by addressing the federal regulatory challenges that make levee maintenance and improvements difficult. This bill directs the Army Corps of Engineers to issue more frequent design standard updates, which will help levee districts better respond to changing rain and flood patterns. This complements the investments already made by Congress and affirms congressional intent in how the Army Corps regulates levee operators along the Upper Mississippi River. I am pleased to be joined on this bill on a bipartisan basis by several of my colleagues in the Illinois delegation and on this committee. This legislation has the support of regional stakeholders, including the Upper Mississippi, Illinois and Missouri Rivers Association, the Illinois Farm Bureau, and Corn Belt Ports, as well as local leaders in my district. Again, I thank you for your consideration and the chance to speak here today. I urge the committee to give this measure strong consideration as it works to draft WRDA 2024 and look forward to working with my colleagues to address these issues, which are critically important to Illinois and every state in the Upper Mississippi region. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Miller. Do any members of our committee wish to offer any questions for our witness? The answer being no, Madam, you are dismissed.
Thank you.
The chairman now recognizes Representative Rick Allen. 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman James and Ranking Member Larson, for the opportunity to provide this testimony and highlight priorities for the Water Resources Development Act that are critical to the 12th District of Georgia, namely the consistent issues we have experienced with the Corps of Engineers regarding the new Savannah Bluff Lock and Dam, or in short, Lock and Dam. Many of you probably recall that I have testified before this committee in years past multiple times, which should also underscore the importance of the Lock and Dam to the residents of my district and the city of Augusta. I want to thank Congressman Mike Collins for raising this issue in the T&I hearing in June with the Corps of Engineers. I would also like to thank Congressman Hank Johnson for being a willing partner on this issue in the past as well. Due to environmental mitigation from the Savannah River Harbor Expansion Project, or SHEP, the Corps is responsible for constructing a mitigation feature that would allow sturgeon and other endangered fish to access new spawning grounds. Dating back to the 1930s, the Savannah Lock and Dam was originally authorized for navigation purposes, but after it was no longer used for commercial navigation, many of the central Savannah River area's largest job creators and both municipalities continue to draw from the pool that the Lock and Dam was designed to maintain. In 2016, the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation, or WIN Act, the language required the fish passage structure to maintain the pool for navigation, water supply, and recreation activities as in existence on the date of enactment of this act. The Corps selected a rock weir as an alternative to replace the Lock and Dam, which I strongly oppose, as it would drop the pool level far below the needs of the community. Lowering the pool does not meet the requirements in the WIN Act and is unacceptable in addition to possible flooding, definitely flooding downstream. In a disastrous simulation carried out by the Corps, we saw firsthand the dreadful impacts of the lower water level that would result from the installation of a rock weir. We saw maroon boats and docks on the ground to excess debris, mud flaps, the river banks caving in, and these businesses not able to draw the water they need, and the cities not able to draw the water they need to manufacture their products and to provide for their citizens. To my relief, the United States District Court of South Carolina ruled against the Corps' proposed plan to remove the lock and dam in favor of the rock weir. However, the appeals court remanded the case back to the district court for further action, placing us back in legal limbo. So we have to do this legislatively. Throughout this tenuous process, Congressman Joe Wilson and I have worked closely with local community leaders and stakeholders who have all agreed that maintaining the water level of the pool above the lock and dam is critical so our water users are not affected. The cities of Augusta and North Augusta, as well as Richmond and Aiken counties, have come together supporting resolutions to protect the lock and dam and maintain the pool at the level of 114.5. If the committee takes anything away from my testimony today, it should be this. The Corps is not in compliance with the WIN Act law by choosing an alternative that does not maintain the pool at the 114.5 level as it was in December of 2016 when the law was enacted, despite repeated bicameral reiterations of congressional intent. I urge the committee to work with me to include language that will repair and maintain the lock and dam and keep the pool level that our community desperately needs, while still accommodating the fish passage required by SHIP. I would also like to flag for the committee another water priority of mine. I am seeking a new feasibility study authorization or a modification to an existing study authorization to examine the benefit of further widening and deepening the harbor of the Port of Savannah to better accommodate today's commercial demands and to prepare for meeting tomorrow's trade needs. Thank you again to the committee for holding this Member Day, and I look forward to continuing to work with you on this issue.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Do any members of our committee have any questions for our witness? Hearing none, thank you, sir. You're dismissed. The chair now recognizes Mr. Soto.
Thank you, Chairman James and Ranking Member Napolitano, for the opportunity to talk about our WRDA projects this year. I bring you greetings from Central Florida, the home of the Northern Everglades. As many people may know, the Everglades starts all the way in Orange County and flows through the Shingle Creek, through the Kissimmee Chain of Lakes, down through Kissimmee River to Lake Okeechobee, and then forms the national park that we all know, love, and dear. And this is a critical area for water quality, for agriculture, wildlife corridors, recreation, and navigation. The first project I'd like to brief you on is the Northern Lake Tehoppa-Caliga Restoration of Water Quality Improvement Project. This is part of the Kissimmee Chain of Lakes, and it's there to improve flood storage, reduce nutrient and sediment flow onto the upper Kissimmee Basin and the Lake Okeechobee watershed. And I'd be remiss if I did not mention, in Hurricane Irma and in Hurricane Ian, we saw these water systems tested to the limit and then some, with flooding affecting many neighborhoods throughout Central Florida. And as we see hurricanes getting more intense, very important that we continue to keep these water systems up to the capacity that they need to protect so many Central Florida residents. The area is also home to the Kissimmee River, which was the largest river restoration in the history of the world, a bipartisan $1 billion project to restore the Kissimmee River to make sure water is clean going into the southern Everglades region. The second project is the Sediment and Debris Management Program and Feasibility Study for East Lake Tehoppa-Caliga, Boggy Creek and its tributaries to improve water flows and reduce flooding and help with sediment and debris management, also in the Kissimmee Chain of Lakes part of this area. The third is a request through the Central Florida Water Initiative, which is a bipartisan initiative for water supply in Central Florida to create alternative water supply projects. This one includes the St. Johns River Taylor Creek Reservoir Alternative Water Supply Project to increase local water supply beyond what is currently available through permitted groundwater. Right now, we get most of our water through the aquifer, but we need to establish more reservoirs. The beauty is this reservoir was already made eligible for water storage in past WRDA bills, and now this would be about expanding this reservoir to help out, particularly agriculture and Central Florida homes. The reservoir is the foundation for developing subsequent phases of the project, such as a treatment plant. It also would serve Central Florida residents in Brevard, Orange, and Osceola counties, where I and Representative Bill Posey represent, and is part of the regional partnership to supply up to 54 million gallons per day in annual average daily flow of treated surface water and public supply. The next project is Lake Conway, which is north of East Lake Tahoe and connects through Boggy Creek and is just north of the Orlando International Airport, one of the biggest airports in the nation. This would be for debris removal, environmental restoration, including water quality improvement. We saw during Hurricane Ian, Lake Conway flooded and East Lake Tahoe flooded, and we literally had to hold water in Lake Conway for days to make sure we didn't have even worse flooding. And so all these systems, as you see throughout many of these water systems in the nation, are all interconnected. And lastly, to expand the regional sediment management program, we can navigate all the way to the ocean and beyond through the Kissimmee Chain of Lakes, through the Kissimmee River, and out Lake Okeechobee. And so making sure that we could help both the waterways as well as use this sand that they pull out for navigation for beach renourishment in Florida and other areas. We can make this work in multiple ways. So thank you, Chairman James. Thank you, Ranking Member Napolitano, for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Representative Soto. Do any members of our committee have any questions for our witness? Thank you. Hearing none, sir, you are dismissed. Representative Bobby Scott, your time is 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman James, Ranking Member Napolitano, and members of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss the priorities of Virginia's 3rd District in the upcoming Water Resources and Development Act. I represent Virginia's 3rd District, where the Chesapeake Bay meets the James and Elizabeth Rivers, and where water represents both challenges and opportunities. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers work to keep America's waterways and ports open to trade while working with communities across Hampton Roads to ensure that we can continue to live with the water surrounding us and shaping the many aspects of our lives. In my home district is the Port of Virginia, which is one of the largest and busiest ports on the eastern seaboard. With 95% of our nation's trade moving by water, it is essential that the port, which is the 3rd largest container port in the country and supports nearly 1.3 million jobs nationally, is able to maintain operations. 3rd District is also home to multiple shipyards and the Norfolk Naval Station, the largest naval base in the world. These waterways are essential to our community's continued prosperity as well as our national security. It is also critical to our financial well-being as we ensure that the Port of Virginia is able to handle an increased number and size of container vehicles. The Port and the Army Corps of Engineers is undertaking the dredging, widening, and deepening of the Norfolk Harbor and channels to ensure safe and efficient two-way passage for the new, larger container ships. And I'd like to take a moment to thank the members of the committee for their work with the Port of Virginia, which allowed it to continue operations, especially at a time when shipping delays plagued many other ports across the country. At a time as the committee begins its drafting of the 2024 Water Resources Development Act, I respectfully request that the committee include a modification of the Norfolk Harbor and Channels Navigation Project to include the deepening of Anchorage F. This modification is consistent with the recommendations of the Army Corps of Engineers and will ensure that the port's reliability and efficacy is not interrupted. My district is also the home of the City of Norfolk, which has been a leader in ensuring that the city can manage the surrounding rising water and is already serving as an example to other municipalities working to adapt to climate change. Unfortunately, due to climate-driven sea level rise, compounded by historic land subsidence in the region, inundation from these waterways poses a serious risk. High tides, northeasters, hurricanes exacerbate the risk of flooding in the city of Norfolk and around the region, and as home of the Norfolk Naval Station and numerous other federal and military facilities, this recurrent flooding poses a national security risk. And I'd like to again thank the committee for moving the Norfolk Coastal Storm Risk Management Project forward, as well as the Virginia Peninsula Flood Study. State and local officials in Virginia have already appreciate the significant threat to sea level rise. Unfortunately, the cost of proactively and aggressively addressing this problem head on is far too great for the city to bear by itself, and we need continued support from the federal government. To that end, I'm requesting the city add the City of Norfolk to the temporary relocation assistant pilot program due to the ongoing Norfolk Coastal Storm Risk Management Project. This would allow Norfolk to join other committees in extending temporary relocation assistance to those who are impacted by the non-structural program of the Norfolk program. This non-structural adaptations are to individual buildings in communities that are vulnerable to flood risk. And finally, I request that the committee include language authorizing the Army Corps of Engineers to include federal lands in their coastal resiliency studies. As I've mentioned earlier, Hampton Roads is surrounded by water and home to numerous federal facilities and military infrastructure, and these areas would be included in these studies. Our region is a perfect example of why comprehensively studying flooding is essential and how we can only resolve the coastal resilience puzzle when we're able to consider all of the pieces. We have to include all of them, including the federal agencies. So Ranking Member, Chairman and Ranking Member, thank you for the opportunity to share my priorities with the forthcoming Water Resources and Development Act of 2024, and I look forward to working with you as we continue this critical work. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Do any members of our committee have any questions for our witness? Thank you, Brother Scott. You are dismissed. The chair now recognizes Representative Sewell for her testimony.
I want to thank the distinguished members of the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee for the opportunity to submit testimony before you today. As you draft the Water Resource Development Act, otherwise known as WRDA, of 2024, I would like to request an adjustment to the non-federal cost share for the construction of the Selma Flood Risk Management and Bank Stabilization Project that was authorized in the 2022 Water Bill. Flooding caused by various storms and hurricanes in recent years has caused severe river erosion in the historic downtown of Selma, Alabama. Not only is it in my district, it's also my beloved hometown. As a result of the storms, many buildings along the riverbank have become structurally compromised, and some buildings have already collapsed into the Alabama River. Army Corps of Engineers officials from the Mobile office warned that the historic Edmund Pettus Bridge could be threatened if the river erosion is not addressed immediately. As the site of the historic Bloody Sunday and the Selma to Montgomery March of 1965, the preservation of the historic Edmund Pettus Bridge and the Selma riverfront is not only important to the city of Selma, but also this nation. Every year, a bipartisan group of members of Congress make the pilgrimage to Selma, Alabama, to retrace the steps of our beloved John Lewis across the Edmund Pettus Bridge, to reflect on the role that the people of Selma played in the advancement of our great democracy. This history must be preserved. As authorized in the WRDA 2022 bill, the Selma Flood Risk Management and Bank Stabilization Project will reduce the risk of the failure of 10 historic structures along the riverbank, protect the Edmund Pettus Bridge, and provide a response for imminent flooding events in the future. The problem is that the non-federal sponsor, the city of Selma, simply cannot afford the $9.26 million cost share that is currently required for this construction project. The median income in Selma is only $31,000 a year, and 30% of the Selma residents live in poverty. The city clearly meets the definition of an economically disadvantaged community, according to the implementation guidelines and guidance of the Water 2020 bill. Moreover, tomorrow marks the one-year anniversary of the severe thunderstorms and tornadoes that caused destruction across my district, including the city of Selma. This disaster placed an unprecedented financial burden on the city of Selma to begin recovery and rebuild efforts from this tornado storm. Simply put, if the current cost structure is not addressed, this desperately needed Army Corps of Engineers project will be significantly delayed, and the severe erosion along the Alabama River will continue. More historic buildings will collapse into the Alabama River, and the historic Edmund Pettus Bridge structural integrity will remain under threat. Not only do the residents of Selma deserve to be protected from flooding, but the nation deserves to have this historic, significant site protected. I thank the committee for your consideration of my request, and I look forward to working with all of you to resolve this issue as we face the 2024 Water Bill.
Thank you, Madam. Do any members of the chair or do any members of our committee have any questions for our witness? Hearing none. You're dismissed, ma'am. The chairman now recognizes Representative Katie Porter, who now has a weapon that she can brandish. You slide over, sweetness. We'll wait until you're ready. You have 5 minutes when you start talking. Thanks.
Thank you, Chairman Rouser, Ranking Member Napolitano, for holding this hearing so that members can share our water infrastructure priorities for this year's Water Resources Development Act. The WRDA process provides a unique opportunity for members to deliver federal priorities and projects that guarantee a consistent and ample clean drinking water and even help constituents avoid devastating flooding. That's exactly what my requests do, and I strongly urge this committee, and I know that they will, give them full and fair consideration. The Westminster East Garden Grove Flood Risk Management, or WEGG project, was authorized in 2020 to reduce the risk to life, safety, and property from flooding in Orange County due to current deficiencies of flood control channels. The WEG project is anticipated to protect 1 million residents, 24,000 at-risk structures, U.S. military operations, and critical transportation infrastructure from $5.45 billion in damage. The project will also save Orange County residents from collectively paying approximately $3.7 million annually in flood insurance premiums. However, the WEGG project cannot access federal funding, and its supposed federal cost share is not enough to help the county prepare 74 square miles for storm readiness. That's why I'm requesting that this committee authorize the Orange County Flood Control District and the County of Orange to enter into a project partnership agreement so that the WEGG project can access available federal funds. I also request that this committee increase the county's cost share ratio to 50% for the project's implementation to improve the flood control and the protection of this highly urbanized at-risk area. The next project is one that many Southern Californians know, the Santa Ana River Main Stem Prado Dam Project, or SARP. SARP is designed to provide flood protection to more than 3.35 million people in Orange, Riverside, and San Bernardino counties. Most of the construction work is finished, but it still needs funding to acquire additional lands for the expansion of the Prado Reservoir, installation of protective dikes, and raising the spillway. If these upgrades aren't made, then the surrounding area could see more than $40 billion in economic losses. That's why I'm requesting that this committee authorize the Army Corps of Engineers to approve new project appraisals that cost more than $1.5 million and to reimburse the county for amended project agreements when new easements are required. These requests are necessary for the project's completion and to safeguard millions of residents from flooding. Finally, I want to highlight my support for a critical drought resilience program in Southern California, the Forecast Informed Reservoir Operations, or FIRO, F-I-R-O, FIRO, program has supported watershed monitoring and modern weather forecasting to capture stormwater at Prado Dam efficiently. It is really a success story of how to balance flood risk management, water supply, and water resiliency. And I know that Ranking Member Napolitano has done so much to champion this project. It should not be surprising to hear that California still struggles with drought. Our rainfall this year is already very low. And because of climate change, the Sierra Nevada snowpack right now, today, is at its lowest level in 20 years. So we are now at a point where we need to be looking at solutions and amid a major water crisis in the West. And programs like FIRO are a significant step in the right direction, and they have been proven already to be successful. Lake Mendocino, for example, in Northern California, saw an increase to its reservoir storage by 20% through FIRO, and now Prado Dam, especially with atmospheric river events, has been able to significantly reduce flood risk for Orange County while also creating levels of water conservation. So I respectfully request that this committee include the projects I've spoken for in support of today in its reauthorization. I know that you share my desire to make sure that every American is safe from ecological and economic disasters, and that all of our constituents are protected from the harmful effects of lasting drought. I yield back.
Thank you, ma'am. Do any members have any questions for Ms. Porter? Thank you for your time. The committee
Thank you
stands
very
adjourned.
much.
Thank you.
Not too bad.
No worries.